Taichiblue Studios.
Music Paint.
Let's see here. So I'm going to try to smooth out those waveforms. So, just to hear what those sound like, right? You can hear the waveforms. And notice each time I play that chord, we get a little different timbre, get a different sound. That's because of this feature right here. If you remember, we set up each of those 4 waveforms. We set them up, and we gave them we set them up as wave random. We had a choice. We could do wave random or wave cycle, and we chose wave random. If we had chose wave cycle, every time you press a note with wave cycle, it would play that next element. So if the first element was a FM square wave, and the next element was a FM saw, and the next element was FM sine, with wave cycle it would play the square wave, then it would play the saw, then it would play the sine, then it would play the square wave, then it would play the saw, then it would play the sine. And so it just cycled through the waveforms every time you played a different note. With wave random, it changes the order and it doesn't necessarily play them at the same time. And for those of you who don't remember, what I'm using right here is the Motif FX editor. They have an editor like this for the Motif XF. They have one for the XS. They have one for the MoX and the MoXF. At times on this channel, I'm going to be using either the editor for the Motif or the editor for the MoX, and we'll switch back and forth between the screens. Like I start off with the screens on this of my actual Motif, and when it's necessary to show those screens, I'll go back to them. But here, I'm going to use the editor to kind of to display some of this. Remember, we picked those 4 waveforms. So like here, we have the FM square is an element number 1. FM shaper is an element number 2. FM metal is the 3rd waveform that we used, and that ha voice is a vocal waveform. And other important thing to notice is they're all in the same group. So when you get ready to create that wavetable, the wave forms that you want to be involved in that wavetable, make sure they are assigned the same group, the group number, and that way they will all participate in the same waveform. And so we can hear them. And as I'm changing chords, I'm playing the notes, you can hear the different forms kicking in. And what's important here is that in our case, in this particular situation, those notes, those waveforms kind of all blend together. Before we've done anything really, for the kind of wavetable I'm designing, and there's a lot of different approaches to wavetables. You can have the waveforms that are radically different and give you wild sounds as you move the wave position in the wavetable. You can get a lot of wild sounds. I picked sounds purposely, these 4 waveforms that I picked, that are going to blend together kind of in a way. And so we start off with something that is somewhat blending. I could have picked a lot of different wild sounds. I could have put percussion. I could have put noise. I could put any kind of thing I wanted. We have 4,000 waveforms to start off with on a Motif. I could have put any of those in my wavetable. I chose 3 FM waveforms and a vocal waveform. So that was on purpose, and you get a certain amount of they blend like right off the bat. Okay, and so if I were to show you what those let you hear what those things sounded like individually, like so for the first waveform, right? What that sounds like. Okay. That's the first waveform. That's what FM square sounds like. If we want to do the FM shaper, so that's what it sounds like by itself. Okay, and if we want to do the third waveform, let's see. That third element is it's called FM metal. So we get a sense of what that sounds like. And that fourth waveform is the vocal waveform. Okay. Okay, gives us that kind of thing going on. Okay, so we can get what they sound like apart, and then and so you can hear the timbre changing as I play the notes. But with a wavetable, the kind of wavetable I'm trying to design here, what I want to happen is, as I'm holding down that chord, I would like to hear, I would like the synthesizer to move through that wavetable. So I would like the wave position to change between those different, those four different waveforms while I'm holding down a note. And right now, it doesn't do that. You know, as long as I hold down the note, you're going to hear the same thing. And it'll only change if I do a note off, you know, take my hands off and then, you know, resound the note. And that's because the wave, the XA control, this XA control feature here, it says XA control and it says wave random. What that does is, what it says is every time you play a note, a different waveform is going to sound. But you have to play a note in order for the different waveform to sound. Okay, and so here's why we recorded the controller arpeggio earlier. We need to be able to control this so that while we hold down the chord or hold down a single note, that it's going to automatically change. And so we needed to create a controller arpeggio to do this. And so in a controller arpeggio, another name for that is a motion sequence. So whenever you record an arpeggio and you're really just manipulating controllers and you're recording the movement of controllers, like we recorded the movement of the ribbon, we recorded the movement of the mod wheel, we recorded the movement of an assignment, one of the assignment knobs. Whenever you record just a movement like that, that's called a controller arc, and it's the same thing as a motion sequence. And so we wanted to create a motion sequence that would control what's happening with this XA control and this wave random here. And one of the things that got that started was, if you remember, we played a chord as a part of that arpeggio. And what that chord did was we recorded the note on and the note off, right? And so we, as a part of our arpeggio, our control arpeggio, we have a note on and note off. We have a mod wheel movement. We have an assignment knob movement, and we have ribbon movement. And so we're going to take advantage of that note on and note off so that our waveforms will change even though we're holding down the note that we're playing. The arpeggio is sending a note on and note off. And so I could go here to get that started and turn our arpeggio, our controller arp on. So I'm going to turn it on here, and I decided I put it in the controller category. I made it a filter type. It's number 39, so I make a lot of these controller arps. And I called this one Wavetable 5. Okay, and so now I just turn it on, and if you listen, you can hear, if you listen, you can hear the wavetable, the position changing in that wavetable for the actual note. So even though I'm holding it down, you can hear it going through those changes, right? And so if I do a whole chord, you can hear it changing, going through the wavetable, and that's because I've assigned the arpeggiator, my controller app, to this sound, my controller arp to this sound. And I have the arp set to repeat or loop. And so what it's going to do is just going to cycle that note on and note off. So it'll keep playing that note on and note off. And every time it plays that note on and note off, it's going to cause my waveform to change. So even though I'm holding down the chord, is sending that note on and note off. And if I wanted to really let's see if we could focus on that here. Right now we have tempo at 153. So if I were to change that and make that faster, say, let's make it 259, right? So it's sending, you can see that it's sending that note on, note off message, that MIDI message faster. You know, so the tempo clock is controlling how fast we're sending that note on, note off. Okay, so if I play a chord, and so that might be the effect you're going for. You have some kind of tempo thing that you might want to do, a speed thing that you might want to do, but let's say in this case I want it to be a little smoother. So let's say what happens if I slow this down. Okay. And so once I slow down the note on, note off, I get a smoother transition between the waves and the wavetable. So the wave position, it moves a little smoother. But that's still too abrupt, okay? Let's say I want to make that a little more so that it's not, that it doesn't move, so that the attack is not as hard going from one wave to the next. I can change the attack on that, right? And so what if I change the attack a little bit here? Let's take it to that, maybe 54. And let's see what it sounds like. So that's a little bit smoother, right? So okay. So now the transition between the different waveforms in the table is smoother, And I was able to accomplish that by messing with the tempo, changing the tempo, and changing the attack. I could also change, there's another parameter that will let me change how the wavetable, how that wavetable position is changed. And this is a feature that's unit multiply with the actual controller arp. I can change the unit multiply on that, and so we're getting something very different there. If I change it now so that it's a fraction of the tempo, that gives the controller arp a different flavor here. So if you can hear that, okay. Sometimes it's hard to hear those kind of changes coming over YouTube. So now we have a nice modulation through that wavetable. And I picked 4 here on purpose just to keep this thing simple. This is we created this wavetable in voice mode on the Motif. And so we only used 4 of the elements. A voice on a Motif has 8, so I could have easily done an 8 wave form wavetable. And if I needed more than 8, I could have gone to the performance mode and created a 32 wavetable. Okay, and so 32 waves, boy, that's going to give you a lot of modulation and in a very fat whatever it is you're trying to do. And if that weren't enough, you could go to song mode or to pattern mode and use a mixed voice, and you can create a 128 wavetable. And so that should do it. You know, that would tie up all your polyphony right away. But if you need it for some reason to have a 128 wavetable, that's how you would do it on a Motif. And quite frankly, if I needed a wavetable that was larger than 128. My MIDI network, I would just connect my Motif, and I have a MoX8. I would connect those two through master mode, and then I could make up to 256 wavetable if I wanted to. If it was critical for some reason for me to make a 256 wavetable, I could do so by just using time 2 of my synthesizers together and using this exact same technique to coordinate the voices. Right? And so there's a lot of approaches, a lot of ways that you can use a wavetable. And I didn't go into explaining how wavetables work. That's a whole nother series of videos. I'm just assuming that if you stumbled across this, how to make a wavetable on a Motif, that you knew where you were trying to go. And I could do other things here. Say, for instance, I wanted to add, say, some effect. Maybe I'll add a flanger. Okay, so let's say I want to add a flanger to the wavetable. Let's see here. So that gives it a little different flavor. Let's take some feedback out of that. Take a little feedback out of that. Let's increase the depth a little bit there. And let's go here to this unit multiply. Let's have that normal here, and let's try something here. Let's see what we've got. So that's giving us a nice sound there, and I could apply any kind of effects I want to. And just keep this in mind, what's going on there. Everybody knows that flangers, they're really, the way you make a flanger is you use, duplicate or split the signal with an LFO. So that's effectively I'm adding some kind of LFO control to our wavetable there. And that brings me to the other point on those wavetables on a motif. We can create that wavetable a number of ways. One way is what I just showed, is we're using a controller arp to create the wavetable by sending note on and note off to the actual XA control wave random setup and the element group. So by sending that note on and note off, we're cycling through the wavetable in random order. Another way would be using user-defined envelopes, and so we can make user-defined envelopes and assign those to the wavetable, and then control that through either a controller ARP or through a LFO. Another way is we have a user-defined LFO that we could use to control what's going on inside of that wavetable. Using we can either control that motion sequence with the user-defined LFO, or we could control some user-defined envelopes, and control that with the common LFO on the Motif or the MoX. And so that basically gives us a nice something we could do here. You hear this, right? And you can hear it cycling through. So you can hear it cycling through that wavetable. It's a fairly simple wavetable. But notice what I didn't do in this knowledge drop. I didn't get a chance to talk about what we're going to do with the fact that we recorded that motion of the modulation wheel. We recorded the motion of the ribbon. We recorded a motion on there, and we recorded a assignment knob. And so you would use those things to add even more character and texture to this modulating the wavetable. So I'm going to, as soon as I get time, I'm really kind of busy these days, but when I get time, I'm going to do another knowledge drop and fill out this talk here and show a little bit more what we could do with that simple four-wave wavetable on a motif. And so for those of you, I dropped this, I put this out just because I know there are folks out there that need to do wavetable or wave sequencing, and they're working with a motif, or they're working with a MoX or a MoXF. But quite frankly, this also works on a Montage. So for those of you that have the Montage or the MoDX, you have an AWM2 engine, you can do the exact same thing. And so if you need to create a wavetable, and you can use it on the Montage, you can also use the motion sequencer, and it has even more flexibility than just doing simple controller ARPs, but they both get the job done. So if you have a Montage or a MoDX and you're trying to create a wavetable or wave sequence, you can easily do it. Just follow the steps here. You have the same types of feature set on those as we have on our Motif. I'm a Motif guy though, Motif and MoX, so this is the main thing that I use. And so when I explain something like this, you're almost invariably going to see it on a Motif or the MoX8, because those are the instruments that I prefer. So in either way, in a couple future videos, I'm going to go more into using that controller ARP. And using the ribbon and the assignment knobs and the mod wheel to actually do more with that wavetable. and then I'm going to show how we can use the user-defined LFO to automate all of that. And then I'm going to show how we can control that automation with automation. So we'll be able to have a pretty deep look into how to and what to do with wavetables on a Yamaha Motif or a MoXF or a MoX or a Montage. So I'll catch you guys next time.